Hey folks, good morning. Welcome back to Three's In. Bobo's back with you. So this morning, I began talking about UPT. That got me up to speed. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about dining ins. Today, they have predominantly dining outs from my observation where your spouse is invited. But when I went through, they were almost all exclusively dining ins where just the members of the mess attended. Okay, dining in is a formal dinner, and when I went through, it was very formal. And you could have a career made or lost in a dining in. That was something you didn't screw around with until the informal activities. But during the formal activities, if you screwed up during the formal activities, they made note on it, and on Monday morning, you were standing tall in the wing commander's office. There was just no doubt about that. And you were going to stand there until you got your mind right. At any rate, first dining in I remember attending was at Randolph Air Force Base when we were going through pilot training. And that would have been 1970-71 time frame. And at that dining in that night, I can't tell you which one it was. They used to have a dining in for every graduating class, and they would invite the new class to that dining in. I believe that's the way it went. And in 1970, they had a dining in, and it was during the summer, and we wore our white jackets with the black trousers. And back in those days, we had to have a winter mess dress and a summer mess dress. So we're wearing our white jackets and black trousers. And I think, if memory serves, this was the night that, this was the dining in for Bill Ferrier's graduation. Bill graduated a year ahead of me. I'd be pretty sure that's what this one was. So Bill was in the graduating class that year, and I was in a new incoming class. Okay, you got the stage set. The speaker was one of the from the command section of Strategic Air Command, SAC. Now, we're all going through in this area, and most of us wanted to be fighter pilots. And to sit there and have to listen to this guy talk about SAC, give me a break. We sat there, we endured it, and oh well. We had one guy from the graduating class who was Cuban, and he got into the artillery punch a little bit too much, and during the question and answer period, he raised his hand, got recognized, made a comment one way or the other, and ended up imploring the head of SAC to go over and bomb Castro. And it went downhill from there. It really went downhill. In those days, we didn't eat our dinner rolls. Those were for throwing. And we would take those dinner rolls and we'd soak them in the red wine. And you could tell one way or another how many hits you had. You could count the hits over the course of the evening by the red splotches on your white mess dress. You didn't throw them so much during the fall, winter months because it didn't show up very well on the black mess dresses. But we had one guy in our class, I can't remember his first name, his last name was DeLuca, and he was just enthralled with this Hispanic general from SAC. And he stood up and was talking in Spanish to this guy. We didn't have a clue what he was saying, we didn't care. But when he sat down, his jacket was pink. He took so many hits from the other members of the mess that his jacket was just pink, just covered. Anyway, you get the picture. The interesting thing about that dining in, I'm pretty sure that was the first dining in I ever attended. The interesting thing about that one is, later that month, we all got a bill from the Officers Club for $25. Now, this is 1970, when $25 was worth something. We all got $25 added on to our club bill because of the damage that had been created both in the dining room and then downstairs in the Auger Inn. But you talk to Bill or me or anybody else who happened to be there that night, what a festive activity that was. Kind of set the stage. Then I went over to graduated, went up to McGuire. It was hard to have a dining in at McGuire because it was a C-141 squadron. And at any given time, half or three-quarters of the squadron was gone. It was deployed overseas on cargo missions and so forth. And I went to Southeast Asia. We had dining ins there, but we wore party suits. I don't think anyone took their formal mess dress to Southeast Asia. But we did have our party suits made up, and so we did that. And we came back to Vance and then got back into the dining in with graduations. There were a couple of them that I remember there. One of them was where Robin Olds was the guest speaker, and what a great speech he gave. I mean, the guy could sit down and say good morning, and you would think it was a great speech. At any rate, he stood there, and I was sitting right in front of him. And, maybe 10, 15 feet back from him, 15, 20 feet back from him. But I watched the expressions on his face as he talked about flying in Vietnam and talked about a couple of engagements that he had with MiGs. Holy crap, you felt like you were there in the airplane with him when he got so intense. And he talked about going after, I think, his fourth MiG. And he said he had to work the guy. And he told about how he came off a run at the guy and checked his fuel. He said they had just barely enough for another engagement. So he told the navigator, he says, okay, hang on, I'm going back at him. So he said as he executed the turn to go back into the fight, he could just kind of barely make out his navigator saying, oh no! So he sliced back and he came up behind the MiG and he's sitting there, he's so intense. And he's discussing the Sidewinders he had, the air-to-air, the heat-seeking air-to-air missiles. And he said, these two were growling, like, and he said, his eyes got real big and he's telling this story. My God, I would have loved to have been with him. So he said he fired off one of them, or I don't know how many it was. I was so intense on watching his facial expressions. So he says he fired and broke away, and as he broke away, he said the damn missile went off on its own. It saw, it goes MiG, cloud, MiG. Oh, let's go get the cloud. He said that they were crap in those days. Anyway, so he told the guy, he says, let's look at the fuel a little closer. I think I got enough. Oh no! He turned around and came back at him again. And he hosed him out, and that's when he got him, I think he said. But at any rate, he was so animated. It was just fun to sit there and listen to him. I was just totally mesmerized. When General Olds agreed to speak to the dining in, we sent up Jimmy Null in a 38 to go fetch him out of Colorado. And when they came back and landed at Vance, there were 5 stars on that airplane for MiGs. Jim had gotten 1. And then Colonel Olds, of course, had gotten 4 during the Vietnam conflict. That was a dining in to remember for sure. After Vance went down to Randolph, I was out of the dining in circuit there for a while, and in Australia we didn't have anything like that. But I came back to Randolph, got into the 560th Squadron, and then we started having the annual POW dining ins. From 1980 through 88, I attended all of them, and in various capacities. And then after I retired, I was on the A list to come back and attend. But I got crossways with one of the squadron commanders, one of the new kids, and I fell off the A list for a couple of years. But then a couple of friends of mine got me back in good graces, and I've been going off and on ever since. Like I said, those functions were so formal back in the day compared to what we see today. You didn't screw around. They were formal, and you had to comply. I mean, I spent a couple of weeks making sure that my ribbons were right, my rank was right, wings were right. because you would be sent to the grog bowl in a heartbeat for a minor infraction. If somebody knew that you had been awarded an Air Force Commendation Medal or something and you weren't wearing it, you went to the grog bowl. If you had on funky socks, you went to the grog bowl. Now, the grog bowl in those days was, and to a large extent today, was made up of some of the most foul alcoholic beverages they could come up with Worcestershire sauce and hot sauce and all that. You didn't want to go there. You didn't want to be sent to the grog bowl. And then, again, back in the day, per tradition, the Mr. Vice, who was like the MC of the dining in, was typically the junior ranking officer on the base or in the squad or in the unit. Well, a couple of those guys screwed it up, so they started elevating it. They started bringing in captains to run, and they brought a couple of captains screwed it up. They brought in majors, and today it's the last ones I've attended down to 560th. I think the fellow's a reserve officer, and he's a major or some. He's Mr. Vice, but that doesn't comply with the tradition. But they kind of look the other way. I guess that's okay. There's one last thing. Oh, let me come back to a couple of guest speakers that we had at Randolph at the POW dining ins. Ronald Reagan spoke there one year. I did not attend that one. Man, I wish I would have. H. Ross Perot spoke a couple times. I did attend two of his where he spoke, and what a great guy that guy was. What a great supporter of the POWs. They all loved him. And then I heard Henry Kissinger talk one year, and that was interesting. It was interesting. We'll just kind of leave it at that and go along. But I did enjoy them. I did enjoy going to the dining in. I enjoyed the festivities. I enjoyed the tradition, the heritage of them. And one year, my daughter called me up and said that a reserve unit out in Colorado was looking for a guest speaker for their dining in. And they wanted somebody from the Vietnam War era to talk. And asked if I'd be willing to fly out and talk there. Well, I suppose I could do that. I could do that. So I did. I flew out and was given that opportunity. What a great opportunity that was to speak at that dining in. It was actually a dining out because the spouses were there. Of course, Dana, my daughter, was there. But I remember walking up to the podium, and after I was introduced, and I just stood there. And I looked over the crowd, and I just stood there. And I put my hands up on the podium, and I stood there. And I said, sorry, folks. I said, I have attended many dining ins over my career. I'm thinking upwards of 15 now, maybe 16. If it's 13, that's okay. You get the idea. But I said, I've always sat there in the crowd and stared up at the podium. I said, this is the first time I've been to a dining in where I've been able to see it from this perspective, and I'm kind of enjoying it. And I just want to take a moment here and savor the experience. Well, that drew a couple chuckles, and once I can get a audience to chuckle like that or to laugh or like that, that's the technique I use for relaxing, and I can go ahead and tell them what I wanted to say. But at any rate, I enjoyed dining ins. I still do when they're held with the degree of what's that word I'm looking for? Reverence, I suppose, is a good word as any that holds to the tradition and the heritage of the dining in that General Hap Arnold came up with. Okay, I rambled on here enough. You got the idea. Enjoy your dining ins. I'm going to Pizza Hut. This is Bobo Base Gear. Stop.